quest to redraw the map of the Middle East, Israel has already gone beyond what many in the region imagined possible. With no one or nothing to stop it, what to expect from this seemingly endlessly expanding and besieging promised land? Well, to discuss that, I'm now joined by Yahia Zoubir, Senior Fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs in Qatar. Mr. Zoubir, it's great to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
You've been an observer of Middle East's shifting sands for many decades, and the region has never been fully free of turbulence, but at least there was a pretense that there was some sort of international law that more or less applied to all actors. Do you think the region is better or worse off now that this pretense has been ripped to pieces?
I think the region in general is in bad shape. It's in pretty bad shape. What we have witnessed, especially since Gaza, what is happening in Gaza and with Israel's unfettered actions. Israel is not just bombing Gaza, destroying Gaza completely and committing genocide. I mean, one has to call it by its name, but it's attacking other countries in the region. And the latest one was the one in Qatar, an ally of the United States and of the West in general. And so that has sort of shaken up the region, not just the states, but also the populations, which are really fed up of these actions.
Well, I hope we can discuss this shakeup in more detail, what exactly it means. But before we go there are different views on whether Israel under Benjamin Netanyahu is acting strategically, whether that has been the plan all along, or whether it is being opportunistic and having no grand plan or exit strategy. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I can be, how should I say it, not politically correct and say this was the plan from before 1948. This was the Zionist dream for a long time, to take over all of Palestine.
But they also dreamt of peace. I mean, it doesn't look like they are aiming for that at this point of time.
What kind of peace? This is the question. If we follow, the UN resolution of 1947 with the division of Palestine into two states, which we are trying to come back to. But, the Palestinians have the right to their own state with their capital and so on and so forth.
Israel has a very long history of bypassing illegal boundaries, but over the past year, I think it's been escalating even by its own very forceful standards. I'm talking about the strikes on neighboring countries, particularly Qatar, as you mentioned, which were carried out in a very demonstrative and some would say very intimidating way. Do you think do you think we have seen the pinnacle already, or do you think there's more room for escalation?
Well, to be optimistic, perhaps, I would say it depends on the United States to a great extent if the U.S. would rein in Israel in its actions. Today they're meeting, Mr. Netanyahu and President Trump, whether, they would put a stop to this. And we saw what happened last week where you had, even European countries who were great supporters of Israel, but who are now for the two-state solution. The question, of course, are they going to put it into execution? So if there is really a will to have peace between two states, side by side, that would be something positive.
That would be a positive or optimistic scenario. If I were to ask you to be utterly pessimistic, what else do you think Israel can take, given that, again, as I said, there is no one at this point of time to stop it?
Well, one of the worst case scenarios, Hamas is present in Turkey, they would attack Turkey. With Netanyahu in office, it is a possibility. Many scholars or many observers, diplomats and all, they said, well, if they attacked Qatar, what is next? And it is a possibility. Netanyahu is doing as he pleases, especially when there was no restraint, no power.
Well, thankfully, Turkey has its own sizable military to put some constraints on that.
Absolutely.
But speaking about the strikes on Doha, what do you think was Netanyahu's calculus and has it been achieved?
There is a policy now where and it's not just Israel, The United States has done the same. That is, you call on a group and you say, we have a meeting with you. Let's meet in such and such place to negotiate. And then you bomb them. It happened with Iran, and it happened with the Lebanese. They met in the same place, and they were all destroyed. You kill all the negotiators, so that's what happened. I suspect this is what happened in Qatar as well. So, but the Hamas, the leadership, somehow, either they were tipped off or I don't know, but they were not in the location. But there was no restraint on Israel to go and attack. Israel could not have attacked without the knowledge of the United States.
But Mr. Zoubir,
Yes.
I'm sure you would agree with that, Israeli intelligence has the capacity of assassinating whoever they want quietly. I mean, without necessarily making it such a public demonstration as happened with the strikes on Doha. Why do you think this was carried out in this very spectacular way?
It's a message. It's a message to
whom?
To the whole Arab world that we can attack whoever we want and no one could stop us. That's basically the message. It's creating fears among the populations and the states of the region. No one expected that Qatar, an ally, a strong ally of the United States and of Great Britain, would have been attacked by Israel.
Now, your foundation is based in Qatar. I know you have many friends and colleagues there. Have you heard from the ground what was the initial response of the people? Because it, to me, I think it sounds like 9/11 for the Americans when you see bombs flying from the sky.
Absolutely. It was a shock. I was on the internet with my colleagues and people wishing well to others. Have you been touched? Have you been affected? What's going on? I see smoke, or, I heard the bombings from my window, and people started going home, go home if you are far from the area where it is.
Preparing for the apocalypse, essentially.
Yes. I don't know if you know Doha, it's small. It's very small. And to go and bomb in a neighborhood that is a very popular neighborhood, where people get together and so on. There's a shopping area there, many
lots
restaurants.
Of foreign tourists as well.
Yes, exactly. And so that has an impact on the future, I believe.
Now, in the aftermath of these strikes, very dramatic strikes on Doha, the leaders of Arab countries gathered to denounce Israeli action, and they suggested suspending Israel's membership in the United Nations, as if that meant anything to Israel. What do you think this response says about the capacity of the Arab countries to be geopolitical actors?
Yeah. Despite the media hype and all, I think it was very timid as a reaction. In the sense, it's not to remove Israel from the UN, which would be a good thing, but that's not. They could have, for instance, if they wanted to show something, is to end the Abraham Accords, for instance. Maybe the main thing that probably had a rippling effect is this close relationship between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. That maybe created some sort of, gave a signal that something bigger could happen. But otherwise, it was rather diplomatic. The Gulf, the GCC countries, don't want war. These are people who thought until the attack on Qatar that they were safe. That, you have in Qatar, you have 12,000 U.S. troops based there in Al Ubaid base. You had a British airplane, circling around when the Israeli planes were about to bomb. So that meeting, I think, could have had a bigger impact if, for instance, there was a clear action right away. I break diplomatic relations. In the GCC, the UAE could have said right away, I'm going to break diplomatic relations with Israel.
I agree with you in the sense that I think it was a response aimed at concealing that there is no response ultimately. But do you think that's going to be a modus operandi of the Arab states going forward? Or do you think after this initial shock, they may gather some stamina and some resolve for a more forthright action?
Hard to say. You saw that even a country like Egypt was not very, hot into, doing.
Well, they weren't striked yet.
So I don't think, unless they do something really concrete, tangible, that shows to Israel and to the United States, because it's really communicating with the United States, to tell the United States, well, we rely on you to protect us. And then, your ally, attacked us. And what is next? So there is still fear in the region that Israel could still attack other members of the Gulf Council,
Now, you wrote recently that there is, quote, burgeoning political and image cost of cooperation with Israel for Arab states. What exactly are those costs?
Well, in the Arab world, the silence can be deceiving. Many, the populations, the Arab populations are very opposed to this relationship with
Common
Israel.
people, you mean,
Common
not the
people.
elites.
Yeah, not the elites. The elites, are collaborating with many, or some of them at least, are collaborating. But the common people, I don't know if you have seen the images of the destruction in Gaza. It's unbelievable. Hospitals have been destroyed. Journalists have been killed. It's total destruction. Yesterday, the tower, the Mecca Tower, was destroyed. So how much more can you do? And you still have, your allies, supposedly the United States with some Arab countries, being silent. So there is the image, and I think that's why. Probably, I'm just speculating here. That's why President Trump had to stress, I would not allow the annexation of the West Bank. It remains to be seen. They had said it before about other places, but it was done. Now you have Israel that occupies part of we're not talking about the Golan Heights and other places, but you have now Syria, part of Syria, and so on. And you have in Lebanon as well. So the populations are watching and frustrated with what is going on in the region, and furious against their their leaders who are doing basically nothing, especially those who have formal relations with Israel.
Well, Mr. Zoubir, to deal with this frustration that I feel building for the break, you mentioned the opinion among common people in Arab countries. And for decades, Israel didn't have the best of reputations on the Arab streets. And frankly, it never prevented it from pursuing what it wanted or assuaging its Arab neighbors with the help of the Americans. And this is what I want to ask you about. Do you think the Trump administration is interested in trying to smooth tensions in a meaningful way among its Middle Eastern allies?
The problem with the United States approach is you want to communicate to the Arabs that you are their friend and so on. You don't want the Russians there, you don't want the Chinese there, but we are the guarantors. But at the same time, they enable Israel to do whatever it pleases in the region, attacking 6 countries in 1 week.
But it's not only allowing Israel to do what it wants, but actually compromising the security, the very premise of this cooperation.
Absolutely. Not only that, okay, it's at 2 levels. One is at the level of U.S. interests, because what Israel does is not in the interest of the United States. And now you have voices within the United States itself who are saying, what is the meaning of MAGA? MAGA means that America comes first, but we see that it is Israel that comes first. And this is read all over. People are seeing it. And these are people from the right in the United States. There are quite a few voices that are raised right now. And then in the architecture, there's this other point, you have the presence of Americans, and there you've had alliances for many decades. That image is fading because people are saying, You cannot tell me I'm your friend and let someone, hate me hard, especially when I have an agreement with you. So it doesn't make sense, even for the elites. But the elites are submissive, as I use the term that you have used.
Now, speaking about broader Western reaction, Israel's operation in Gaza has led several Western countries, such as Britain, Australia, Canada, France, to recognize Palestinian statehood. And I want to ask you whether you think this step carries any geopolitical significance, or like in the case with the Arab countries and their response to Doha strikes, it's largely about demonstrative action and nothing substantial.
Right now, opinions are divided. Some are saying, so what? It's a question. I recognize you. Many other countries, dozens and dozens of countries had recognized, the Palestinian state since its foundation in 1988 in Algiers, as you remember, in November 1988. What is next? Are you going to fight for this two-state solution? Are you, the Europeans that just recognized the Palestinian state, would they go to the White House and say, now we have to have a Palestinian state, we have to start rebuilding and doing this?
And even if they do that, which is doubtful, what they are going to hear in response.
Absolutely. And so I don't want to be pessimistic, but the historical reality shows that nothing much will happen. There is, too much pro-Israeli lobbies in the United States, and not just pro-Israeli. You have, the neocons. You have, a big group of people who are putting, pressure that even President Trump, with all his charisma and all, has to deal with. And even in his own administration, there are so many pro-Israeli people. So I don't know whether the U.S. would somehow say, okay, enough is enough. It's not in our interest, because now our allies in the Middle East are going to start turning to China and Russia, assuming that China and Russia are willing to take over the security of the Middle East. But I don't think it's going to... something will happen with the 10. Yes, there is some movement that countries like Britain, which is responsible for what is happening today even, has recognized this.
Well, I've heard an opinion that this sort of recognition of dissipating, ever diminishing Palestinian statehood by Western powers was also an act of sort of political narcissism aimed at assuaging the anger of their own domestic Muslim diasporas, rather than any meaningful solidarity with the suffering people in the West Bank or Gaza. What do you think about that?
It's not just the Muslims. I don't know if you've seen the demonstrations in Italy. It's not the Muslim. Yes, there's a lot of pressure from civil societies in those countries. And we can put it in the context of what we're discussing at the Valdai now. The West is in decline. The image is no longer the same. You have in the entire, if you travel throughout the Arab world, the West, hypocrites. They tell us democracy, rule of law and all, and look at what they are allowing, a genocide under their own eyes.
But Mr. Zoubir, it's not only allowing genocide in Gaza, but also the the strength of their own democracies. If there are so much protest, as you say, in Italy to Israel's action, why is it not changing the governmental policy? That's what democracy is supposed to do.
That's very true. I remember when we were demonstrating in 2003 to stop the war in Iraq. There were millions in England, millions in Spain, millions in the streets, and it hasn't worked, which shows the fragility of the so-called democracy in the Western world. But now the image of the Western countries is really bleak. In the Arab world, nobody believes anymore, including the elites. Not the elites in power, but in the diasporas, the foreign diasporas in democracies. They don't believe anymore. They say, we came, we fled our countries, we migrated and so on because we believed in the democratic institutions and so on and so forth. And it is not true. Can you believe, if you know about the freedom of speech, I live in France, and so many French people have been arrested because they use the term genocide, for instance. What kind of free speech is this?
To be cynical, I think there is one sort of silver lining in this whole equation, because the sheer number of Palestinians does present an objective challenge for Netanyahu, which I suppose he would want to outsource to his Arab neighbors. Do you think he's likely to succeed in that, fully driving the Palestinians out into the neighboring states?
Well, first, the Palestinians are not going anywhere because they are the first ones who are resisting. They're preferring to have the bombs fall on them than to go to the neighboring countries. We have to understand that. And to exterminate 2 million people,
it's hard.
It's pretty hard.
You don't think that Israel has the ability or the guts for that?
Because I believe, although 87% of Israelis, these are the last opinion polls, supported what is happening in Gaza. But I think more and more there is a fracture in Israeli society towards this. Initially it was only how do we spare the hostages? But now it's more voices saying, let's stop what is going on. So whether that is enough to stop him, because his government is there's right, extreme right, but there is something beyond extreme right. And this is what's happening in Israel domestically.
Now, Israeli leadership likes to talk a lot about this greater Israel idea, and while they have the military capacity to grab the land, it's not certain that they have enough people to populate all the territory. Do you think a new wave of repatriations, like the ones we saw, back in the 50s and the 60s, is possible?
What I believe is what could stop it. The plan, this greater Israel and all, cannot happen without the support of the West. It's point blank. Who supplies all the weapons? Who supports Israel technologically, financially, and so on? So it's not Israel as such. For a long time, Israel was portrayed as the, sort of behemoth, But what happened in the war in June between Iran and Israel showed that Israel is very fragile. This is why Netanyahu called on Trump to ask for a ceasefire, because the Iranians had hurt Israel very badly.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Iranian capacity to resist Israeli expansionism has been damaged, but I suppose it's not fully extinguished. And ideologically, I think Iran also has more stamina, more resolve to call out Israel than some of its Arab neighbors. I wonder if you think that any Sunni and Shia realignment in the region is likely in the face of the Israeli expansionism and subdued yet palpable opposition to it.
My response to you, look at the normalization between Saudi Arabia and Iran. It could happen. It's true that this schism between Shia and Sunni is around, but I think in the face of a common enemy, that can be overcome. I could not swear on it. But it's changing. Especially you have new generations that don't have those feelings about you are Shia, I'm a Sunni. It's dissipating throughout the Middle East. It used to be for a while. In the past, Iran was scared some of the Gulf countries, for instance, because fear of the Shia spread. The religion. Now, later it became the power. It was, Iran is a strong country. And at the same time, it's not just fear, but also admiration. This is a country that has been under sanctions for decades and is holding, tight against, the West. And travel to North Africa, which is far from the Middle East, and ask about Iran, people are very impressed about Iran. They don't say, oh, it's a Shia country, we don't want... No, Iran is standing up to the, has been able to stand up to the...
And to some
Israel.
extent, the Iranian ideology has been vindicated about Israel. I mean, they've long been negative, but it has been vindicated because what they used to call Zionism is now playing itself out in the open in Gaza, in the West Bank, and with not many actors being able to resist it openly. I think it, gathers some respect, genuine respect
You are
from
absolutely
the
correct.
observers.
You're absolutely correct. There is a great deal of respect for the Iranians, for where they stand on the issue, not just vis-a-vis Israel, but in general towards the West and so on, and about its development. So the perception, if you look at the perceptions in the region, is the West does not want us to develop. This is why countries are moving towards China and Russia. Or if there was another power, I would name it. But these are the two that constitute now new poles that can, at least the concept of multi-alliance or hedging. These are countries that are capable of at least countering the hegemony, the Western hegemony.
But in order for that hedging to work properly, I think those countries will also have to find some dignity and strength within themselves rather than, hoping on some other great power to solve the problems for them.
I totally agree with you. The cleaning has to happen domestically. The governance, there are a lot of issues. It's not just a matter of what can Russia do for country X or countries, weapons, to give me weapons, okay. But if I'm a corrupt country, if I cannot have a good standing army and so on. China is also there economically. But can I learn from those countries? Can I really resist the imposition coming from the north? This is the question nowadays.
Well, Mr. Zoubir, I guess this question will have to be left open because this is all we have time for, but I really appreciate you being on the show
My
today.
pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Hope to see you again.